Hey, what's up? It's 95X Live, and we are joined today by Porter Robinson. How are you today, sir?
I'm awesome. How are you?
Good. Thank you again for taking the time to do this today, and not only to connect with me, but our listeners and your fans. You have really made an impact with this new single called "Look at the Sky."
Well, likewise, thanks so much for taking the time with me. And I really, it's been kind of stunning to me the degree to which the song has been getting played, and it's just like I've said this before, but when you're making music, oftentimes you can kind of lose perspective on what it is that you've made. And like this was a song that happened to come together over the course of like 3 years. And it got so messy at certain points, and I had to pick up the pieces and rearrange them. And it was a total labor of love. And by the end, sometimes the result can feel a little unrecognizable, and it's like you just can't see it objectively. You've worked too much on it. And so I can't tell you how much it means that it's being played on alternative radio. I mean, it's beyond any expectation I had for it, and I just feel so much gratitude, honestly.
I think it sounds exactly like alternative music in 2021. I think the rest of the world is kind of behind the curve, if we're being completely honest. I think the sounds that the young people are making within the genre are some of the most important that have happened in decades. And I think you're definitely in the conversation when it comes to that. I think the thing that a lot of people are not aware of is that "Look at the Sky" is not the first single from your forthcoming album, Nurture. It's actually the fourth. That there were three singles released prior, which were "Get Your Wish," "Something Comforting," and "Mirror."
Yes.
And maybe it's me, but it seems like there's a recurring theme or something that weaves these songs together. And when you get into the videos for each of the songs as well, there seems to be a story that connects the songs. Is the album Nurture, which drops on April 23rd, sort of a concept record, or is it sort of me overthinking it?
No, I think you're right on the money. I mean, I wanted to make an album that felt like it was, like it was something that was held together. Like there was like you said, like a fiber that's weaving all of its elements together. And well in advance of making the music, I knew that I wanted to cultivate this certain sense of beauty and longing and hopefulness through the way that it sounded, where a lot of my older music, it had this sort of wide open 80s synth vastness to it, and this sort of nostalgia, which is funny because I was born in 92, but a lot of the music I was listening to in 2013, 2014 was so referential to the 80s that it rubbed off on me. I knew that for this record, the sense of beauty that I wanted to bring, I wanted it to feel a little bit more up close and a little more real life and a little less in La La Land, less fantasy and more kind of everyday. And so, like a lot of the music is me trying to capture some of that beauty that I think does exist in the real world if you look for it. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the songs are me giving a voice to sort of my own inner like very critical inner monologue. And it's like I'm using all these voice effects to pitch my voice up, so it sort of sounds like a woman's voice or a child's voice, and it has this sort of alien duet thing going on. And what that represents for me is these alternating voices that I feel, one of which is like my anxieties, which is you're not good enough, or it's taking you too long, or you're getting too old, or whatever. And then the other part of is my values, which is there's good reason to be hopeful, and there's a good reason to pursue a sense of meaning, and the things that we do matter. And it's like there's this clash between these anxieties and these values. And yeah, and I sort of take that dialogue and I'm trying to decorate it in all of this beauty, like a little bit of spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down in a way. Like I know all my music sounds very kind of twinkly and hopeful and sort of delicate. But I think there's a little bit of, I try to inject a little bit of pain with the lyrics too.
Well, I want to go back to that word, hopeful. As somebody who has struggled with anxiety and depression my entire life, you can have a tendency to connect with music that's created by people that have also had similar issues. And when I go back to that word hopeful, when you really pay attention to your lyrical content, you can tell that there's, you know, I don't want to say like a depressed person writing it, but there's somebody that's having similar thoughts to those of us that suffer from that have. But in the end, especially with Look at the Sky, to me, what I pull from that song is yeah, you know what, like right now kind of sucks, but there's the future, there's tomorrow, there's hope. And that's what I've taken away from the majority of your music that I've listened to. Is that something that you've kind of done in an intentional manner, or something that's just sort of happened along the sort of evolution of who Porter Robinson is?
Well, listen, I think you're right on the money with what you're hearing in the music. And it's funny because there was a long time where I wanted to disguise that element. You know, there was a period where I was thinking, if I go into the studio and I write these songs that are about the fact that I feel like I can't do the one thing I'm supposed to be able to do anymore, which is make songs, is that not going to invite so much skepticism about the music itself? Are people going to go, well, he's saying he can't do it, this might not be all that good? You know, that's one of a million anxieties that you have writing music, that you know, where I'm trying, well, I'm not, the thing is, I'm not even trying to be vulnerable. It's more like the only lyrics that I could put on paper that gave me that gut punch were the ones that told some truth I didn't really want to tell. You know, it's like I can write all these like pseudo poetic lyrics that have the right syllables in the right places, but if I'm looking at it at the end of the day and it just feels like meaningless, or I don't know how to apply it to my experience, it doesn't give me that feeling of being choked up that I need when I'm trying to make something stimulating, you know? And so ultimately, like, I fought tooth and nail to not write songs about depression and about, you know, the darkest places that I was going. And eventually those lyrics were the only things that got me out of bed. It was like, once I put pen to paper and told some of these truths that were harder, I was like, wow, now this slaps. Like, now this actually catches my ear and it resonates with me emotionally. And yeah, you know, it's like, in a way, it's kind of embarrassing to show these songs to my family. I'm like, I don't want them to worry about me, you know? And it's like, but at the same time, I just know that there's truth in it, and that it is derived from truth. And ultimately, you know, there was a point where I was like, I've achieved, I mean, your listeners might not be familiar with me. I came from the like EDM DJ world. I I've done a lot in that world, and I've been fortunate to do more than I think I ever expected, and play all these main stages and do all these tours. I've been touring for over 10 years now, and there was a point where I was like, okay, I've got pretty much all the achievement I could ever hope for. I don't think that the next level of achievement is going to be the thing that fixes me. And I'm still, it's like something's missing, you know, like I something feels really wrong. And I don't feel fulfilled. And there's so much that went into that. There was a great deal of family issues at the time. There's a great deal of illness, and you know, my life was totally out of whack. Like, I was spending all my time trying to make music and zero time taking care of myself or having new influences, or, you know, experiencing the beauty and joy that there is to in this world.
I don't know that we were on a question. I think we were just sort of talking.
Just talking.
Yeah, you had. Well, this is a great way to kind of maybe put us back on track. Is not only, you know, we mentioned earlier that this is single number 4 from an album that drops in April. I think people don't have an awareness in the mainstream that you've been putting music out since 2011, and it simply takes a visit to your Spotify to find out how thoroughly absorbed in that scene you were, with tens of millions of streams. And you know, nothing against your earlier music. It doesn't resonate with me the way the current stuff does. Because I mean, I'm decidedly older, plain and simple. The EDM scene never really hit me. I was never much of a Skrillex guy. And it seemed like a lot of the people that were into that stuff were, I don't know, not necessarily there for the sole purpose of enjoying the music. It seemed to be more like a club scene, like raves were when I was more your age.
Yeah.
And what I love about the more modern stuff, the 4 singles that you've put out off of Nurture, is there's an honesty there. There's a mind share now that talking about depression and talking about these anxieties that we as a society have, and the fact that's become more socially acceptable, and you're so honest and earnest with your lyrics that I think that's the connecting point. And ultimately, that's not even a word, regardless of the success, regardless of the success that you've had already in the world of electronic music, I think what you're doing now is going to catapult you into a mainstream position that I think would equal a Marshmello or a Benny Blanco or even guys like Black Bear. Even though it's a different point of view, I think ultimately you jumped the shark from the pool, so to speak, of that EDM scene, and you're now in this world of discovery, not only about yourself, but of your music, your artistry. And it takes just a quick look at through your music videos to understand the maturity that you have at the age of 28. And I think a lot of that is based on your early successes and your struggles. And now, I mean, I've been in the industry for almost 30 years, so I understand the mind of the artist and how those depressions and anxieties creep in and they build in, because you're always trying to do better. You're always trying to do, you know, the most honest work that you can if you're a true artist. And I think that maybe part of your struggle is the fact that, like, we're on the precipice, and now it's just a matter of this album seeing the light of day, and all of these people that pinhold you into this EDM category are going to see that Porter Robinson is not just this EDM act. He is producer, songwriter, and talent that comes along maybe once in a generation.
Oh, that's so kind, man. Seriously. I mean, I appreciate that so much. And it's always hard for me to take praise of that degree, because, you know, as you know, I've got all this, it's hard for me to accept. And it's like, I'm always bracing myself for a disappointment of some kind too. I don't know if you relate to that. But what you said reminded me and got me like back on track, which was one of the things that I was feeling before was like, I remember thinking the thing, like, achievement is not going to be the thing that fixes me, or is not going to be the thing that like makes me happy. So like, what am I doing this for? You know, making this album when I was struggling for so long to try to put this together, I was like, what is the point? Like, why do I still need to do this? And I think the answer that I sort of came to was that, like, I don't know, God, if this, I needed to stop doing it for myself or for my own sense of achievement or for feeling like I was going to make it to the next level, because that can't motivate me at this point, because I've seen how much, like, a certain degree of success has kind of screwed me up and made it harder to make music. But I was like, there has to be some point to what I'm doing, right? And I think ultimately what that became for me was, I think that this music can be helpful. If this music is helpful to one person who hears it and thinks like, God, I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I was the only one. And they can hear it and go, this is part of the human experience, and this is something that can be overcome, then that makes it all worthwhile to me. And once you have that purpose, and you have that thing in your back pocket to say, this can be genuinely helpful to somebody, then, like, it opens up the world. It's like, well, you know what? I am going to do this to the fullest, and I'm going to make this as great as I can. And I'm going to try to take this as big as I can, not for my sake any longer. Although, you know, I mean, we're all human. Everybody craves validation and money and things like that. But I know in my heart that the truth is that I'm genuinely trying to make something that is helpful to people. And the other feeling that I always think about, I go back to this all the time. I think about my favorite artists. I've talked about this before, Justin Vernon and Bon Iver. He's my hero. I think about Daft Punk, who just broke up this week. And when I think about their music and I think about their world, just the fact that they exist and the fact that they put music out into this world, like, I just know the world is better off for it. Like, I glow. Think about your favorite artist of all time and think about if they just disappeared or if they had never done what they did. Like, those artists that you anchor on as a youth, the ones who make a difference in your life again and again and again, or have those albums that you can always go back to and they will always give you that sense of joy. I mean, that is priceless, honestly. And you know, I find myself thinking, God, if this album is that for just one person, that they can be 50 years old and think back on this album and it'll fill them with that sense of joy and meaning and purpose and love, like, that is just totally life-giving. And so that is the thought I was trying to finish earlier when I stammered for 50 seconds. That was the second half of it. And so, you know, it's like, that was the thought, I think, that shifted things for me, because there was a point where I was like, and I always feel so bad saying this, because I know it's hard for people to understand who haven't gone through it. But when you have that extreme depression, and in my case, where my whole life, the only thing I wanted to do, I wanted to prove myself again. I wanted to make another album. I wanted to make another song I was proud of. And it had been like a couple years since I had done that. Like, it was, I feel tempted to put an asterisk on this and apologize for it, but the truth is it was excruciating. Like, there's a part of me that wants to go, you know, there's people starving around the world. Yes, that's true. This was still very difficult. And so I was like, God, like, what am I doing this for? And I'm so glad that I pushed through to the other side and said, no, this is meaningful. Like, this is what I'm here to do. And yeah, so that's it.
Well, ultimately, it has to feel somewhat cathartic, almost like you've purged that part out into the world, and in a good way, where it's going to impact your fans in a positive way. Because I've, you know, looking through your social media and seeing how people have responded to the first 4 songs you've released has been inspirational for me, because you're providing a light of hope for a lot of young people that don't necessarily have the voice that you have on the grand scale, or that I have on a local scale in upstate New York. And I think you and I both know that feeling of isolation, of feeling like nobody else feels this way.
Yeah.
When you hear that in art, the way that you've put it out there, it can be cathartic for the end user as well. And you deserve a lot of praise for opening yourself up as honestly and as earnestly as you did through the production of Nurture. And I know that you said you didn't like that word vulnerable earlier, but it's a true statement. You've allowed yourself to bare your soul to the world. And the end of that is, you know, you're helping some other people that you don't even know.
Yeah.
And you're doing it in a way where it's so true to yourself that nobody could ever question the artistry behind it.
Oh, man, I appreciate that so much, because I do so much questioning of it. And so, you know, a buddy of mine who's in a band texted me just yesterday and said, he just showed me this text from the bassist of the band saying, dude, Mirror by Porter Robinson is one of my top 10 favorite songs of all time. I don't know this guy. That just completely made my night. Just like, I don't know what it is about it. I guess we're just all human and kind of wired to seek and love approval, but like, it's just, it just means so much to me when people care about it. It really does, because I truly put my whole life into it for a few years. And you know, there's so much to be said around, I really put myself through the ringer in terms of like, am I romanticizing this depressed artist life? You know, that's like a very uncharitable way of phrasing it, for one, to say, you know, romanticizing. But still, it's that criticism would pop up in my head. And like, the reality of my experience is like, no regrets, but I would not want to go through what I went through for nurture again. You know, like and I never want to put it out there into the world that this is a necessary piece of making art either. I have made stuff that I felt really proud of from a place of joy and from a place of excitement. And I had months where I was feeling awesome, and I made some of my favorite music ever. And so, you know, I always feel wary that some young artist who is making their best work and living their best life is going to listen to the music and go like, God, I have no angst. What's wrong with me? And, you know, it'll probably catch up to them. Most people will usually have something that they have to, I think artists are just really kind of hypersensitive people in general. And you know, at some point you're going to encounter some criticism that hits at your core, or some difficulty or some life experience or some failure that's going to hurt. But you have to understand too that I think it's that exact same sensitivity and vulnerability that allows you to tap into those emotions that make music compelling, that will make the road of life occasionally pretty bumpy. And that's putting it lightly, you know. So, you know, it's like I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I'm happy that my life is the way it is. And just to be on the subject of vulnerability, man, this last week for me it's been a real low point. And I almost hesitate to say it, because on one hand, I want people to believe that I fixed all my problems, you know, like I wrote this album, I'm on the other side and I'm just fully happy. But on the other hand, I kind of don't necessarily want people thinking that, because if they're sat there thinking, I've been working on recovery for 6 years, I'm on the other side, I'm still not perfect, what's wrong with me? That's equally harmful. And so the thing that I always try to say about like recovery of any kind is, and you know, this is, I personally am not, and I haven't struggled with alcoholism, but I have some friends who are, and since I've talked to them about anxiety and depression, they always talk about this concept of an upward spiral, which I think is really helpful. I think that is a brilliant concept, because it puts it into perspective that if you can just reduce the intensity and frequency and duration of those really difficult moments, you don't have to be perfect. You can still have a week where it's hard to get out of bed and you still have hope. And that's been me this week. And it's been so interesting, man, because, you know, I've just really been going through it this last week, just really struggling to find motivation, a lot of sadness. And this morning, you know, we had to put my dog down this morning, and it was a real question for me whether I was going to be able to do these interviews. And I was like, you know what, like, I'm going to show up for these. I'm not going to be beaten down by this. And it's weird. It's very strange that, like, I don't know. It's like, I love that dog so much, and I'm weirdly at peace today. Like, I mean, everyone grieves differently. And I bawled my eyes out the last time. My last dog who passed away, I mean, I just lost it. But strangely today, I'm like finding a little bit of strength and resilience, both in the knowledge that, you know, he was suffering and it was clearly the best choice, but also that, like, maybe I can take this hardest day ever and still show up and still do my best and still try to put some light out in the world. And so, you know, I might be a wreck tonight, we'll see. But for now, I'm taking it moment by moment, and just made a commitment this morning that I'm still going to try to do everything that I need to do today, and not wallow. And maybe I'll do that later when I need to. So anyway, Scott, so much. This is I should pay you for the therapy fees today. Um,
No worries, my man.
um,
Very sorry to hear about the pup, man. I'm an
thank you.
animal lover myself. I actually have led the charge in doing a pet segment for the station for the last few years about
Really?
finding fosters and new homes for pets in need. So trust me, I understand exactly what that loss feels like. I've been shredded and gutted every single time I've lost a
Yeah.
pet. So there's
Mhm.
no shame in that whatsoever. I do know that we're running out of time.
Okay,
I
sorry.
will thank you again for taking the time today to talk to not only me, but our listeners, your fans. Just a reminder that Nurture comes out on April 23rd. You can call in and request Look at the Sky on 95X. The in-studio number is 421-9595, 95x.com. Hit us on the text line, 629-9570. I'm looking very forward to what comes next for you, sir, and I wish you nothing but the absolute best and success going forward.
Likewise, Scott. I mean, thank you so much. I can tell you're a person who has been through a lot and seen a lot of sad things and has come out on the other side with a great deal of strength and perseverance. And, you know, I just really appreciate the conversation with you today. And, you know, yeah, I mean, this was like illuminating and reinvigorating and, you know, yeah, just thanks for playing the song and taking the time to talk to me. It was awesome.
Awesome, man. Well, have a great rest of your day. And once again, rest in peace for that pup.
Thank you. Yeah, rest in peace, Zorro. He was a good guy. He was he's in a better place, but he was a good guy. Awesome. Thank you, man.